Two key comparisons on the open government. First, which method is better for citizens to live in the even during the physical crisis? Secondly, which method is actually better government should take to more rapidly escape from the fiscal crisis? Those key points based on this comparison, I will talk about two things. Firstly, how government wasting money in fiscal crisis, especially the government is spending is unnecessarily important to achieve their government. Secondly, how raising up, and also I will talk about on the first point about how after reducing the money government spending, we can secure the basic life of citizens and we can rapidly escape from the fiscal crisis. Secondly, how raising taxes is bad for citizens' life and rather it's counterproductive to deal with the fiscal crisis. Before moving on my first issue, let me set up the model from the opening government. Firstly, the reduction or in government spending meaning we are happy to reduce unnecessarily and not urgently important, such as, for example, the developmental aid, such as, for example, the space research and so forth. We have to save those kind of money and distribute to that kind of money to each bank or to each individual. Secondly, raising tax means we have those kind of government deprive some level of property of individual and what we suppose on our side of the house is that we have to keep the SQ status quo framework of the taxation. We're happy to secure this kind of situation on the outside of the house. Moving on to my first issue, how government is wasting money. So, in general, not the case of the fiscal crisis, we're happy to use such kind of money in the long-term viewpoint. For example, we have to do the developmental aid to the developing country, or we have to do the same another country's people from the poverty. However, at least when it comes to today's context, like there is a huge amount of economic crisis is happening in the status quo. We think we're happy to call it the waste of money because those kind of money is extremely large in the first place. The government has a lot of spending a lot of money on that sphere. How on our side it can be rectify this kind of situation? Firstly, we have to save and we have to stop this kind of aid or this kind of researches which cost a lot, and we have to distribute this kind of money to each bank or to each individual. For example, we have to distribute this kind of money to each bank. We have to decrease the amount of interest that the individual have to pay instead of they borrowing the money from the bank, or we have to we have to incentivize the citizen. So in those kind of situations, we can incentivize the citizen to work or to spend money rather than on their side. Why is it so important? Because especially in the economic crisis, people will hesitate to use money to use money for example creating a company or doing something that they want to do. We think it's actually harmful because they always even the rich people will save their own money and they don't use their own money for the society, meaning that there's no outsource of the own money, meaning that the societal overall money will be decreased under the status quo. We think it's extremely harmful to escape from the economic crisis, because economic crisis means that we have to need to accelerate the economic situation, and we have to incentivize the citizens to work a lot and to make more and more products. We think actually it's important. That's why we have to distribute this money to each individual. So secondly, how the raising tax is extremely harmful for the citizen life. Firstly, in the first place, we think that raising tax is extremely harmful for the poor people, especially in the economic crisis. Because in the economic crisis, no one knows when they will be fired by the company, or no one knows they can actually get the job. In that kind of situation, they have to likely to lose money because of that raising tax. We think in those circumstances, the livelihood protection or those kind of situation is going to be dangerous. It is extremely harmful, especially in the fiscal crisis. And second level analysis here is that those kind of raising tax is going to disincentivize the rich people or those kind of progressive people to use their own money. Why? Because they are caring about the laws that they have to pay for the government. For example, if they buy something, they have to pay a lot for government compared to the status quo. Meaning that, and also in the situation of the physical crisis, everyone care about their own property, how the property is going to be in the future. In that kind of situation, no thank you. Within the natural level, rich people or those kind of everyone is losing the incentive, rather losing incentive to pay money, and rather they start to save their own money to secure their own life. Yes.
Okay, in many countries, the spending like space research or development aid is less than 1% of spending. If you support a rapid escape from the crisis, please defend a hard stance, like for example, reduction of welfare or hospital fee or livelihood protection.
We think that okay, even if we consider those kind of hard stances, the other also is much better because it's the logic is here. Logic is the same because if we raise tax a lot from the get taxation from rich more, and this situation will disincentivize the rich people to work or to make the progressive amount of company and so on. In that kind of situation, the money doesn't go to the society. The money doesn't go trickle down on everywhere. In that kind of situation, we think the economic situation is more becoming harsher on their side of the house. We think on comparison here is that on the other side we have to decrease the amount of unnecessarily important the government spending. We're happy to decrease the kind of situation, and we're happy to save the more and more people. That's what we plan to propose.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for his speech. Now we'd like to invite leader of the opposition to open the opposition's case in the remaining speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do not think that practical sphere of the reduction or raising tax is important. We think that rather than that, we think that as the government, the reduction or raising tax, which is just for the government, and that is our stance. Opening opposition side raise. I'm going to talk about three things in this debate. Firstly, about why how the collecting money as the government should be, and secondly, why the reduction is unjust as a form as the government, and thirdly, why the raising tax is just rather than the reduction. But before that, let me shortly set up the model and shortly refute what previous speaker mentioned. So our model is that, and raising tax means that this is proportionally raised. I mean, we raise the more raising tax on the rich people and less raising tax on poor people, so that poor people can still access to this kind of social welfare system, because the amount of money those poor people receive by social welfare is over than those who receive by raising tax. Okay, so that's our model. So let's move on to refutation. The previous speaker mentioned that previous speaker model was that we cut unnecessary part of budget, national budget. We don't think, as my partner pointed out, we don't think it's real. We don't think it's real. Why? Because the depression or this kind of fiscal crisis is really gradual things. So if it's really unnecessary things, when the company fall into depression, I mean a short degree of the fiscal crisis, the government try to cut down this kind of unnecessary things. I mean, why the situation is that fiscal crisis. I mean, the huge burden they have. So at that time, it's reasonable to think that this kind of unnecessary thing is going over before falling into fiscal crisis. What we have to do is to cut down this kind of necessary thing, like social welfare, security, or this kind of national budget. And also another point. That is why we don't think it's reality. We don't think it's real. So the model should be whether in reduction the government should cut down this kind of necessary budget. I mean the social welfare or social insurance like that. So let's move on to the first argument. How the government raising how collecting money should be. We think that these kind of things should be proportional. I mean, fiscal burden should be progressive. What's that? Because the rich people, I mean, in the country, rich people have more money than the poor people, so that they should take more burden and they should take more responsibility. And on the contrary, the poor people, because they have the less money, they should have less burden or less responsibility for fiscal crisis, compensate for the rest classes. Why is that? For instance, what we are actually doing, the income tax we raise our money, more burden on the rich people, and corporation tax we put more burden on the rich companies. Why is this important, and why it should be the progressive? Because the fiscal crisis, who is responsible for fiscal crisis? We think that the fiscal crisis, the cause of fiscal crisis is mainly rich people and rather than the poor people. Why is that? Because in the fiscal crisis also apparently responsible for the government failing tactics or failing policies. But who control the government policies? Because that is the crucial point, and we think that that's the rich people. Why is that? Because in the election, in the policy-making process, the rich people are robbing a lot of money, so that the Keidanren or Ishikai or this kind of group, and who are richer group, I mean, who have a lot of money, robbing that policies, robbing that political party, so that the politicians make the suitable policies for these robbing group, and as a result, the politicians fail in the policies, and they fell into the huge depression. I mean, fiscal crisis. And in that process, who is responsible for? Because the government, the robbing people, I mean, the rich people supported the policies by raising money. And that is why we think that rich people are to some extent responsible for that crisis, that fiscal crisis, rather than poor people. And that is why rich people are responsible for that crisis. So that is the justification. That is why the rich people are more responsible than the poor people. And that is why we should be progressive. Secondly, why the reduction is unjust? Because the government, if we take the reduction policy, I mean, they uniformly reduce the money to pay for the social welfare or social insurance. What will happen is that even though the comparatively poor people are relying on this kind of social welfare system, social security which government provide, they cannot receive that services. So, and then, I mean, as a consequence, poor people are progressively get harmed. How is that? How's like that? So rich people, because they still have their private property. So even though if we take the reduction policy, then rich people can still deal with their private property. Like when they get disease, they can privately use the private money to go to hospital, and finally they got cured. But on the contrary, poor people who relying on this kind of social welfare system, because the government reduced the amount of money to provide to the poor people, so that even though they get disease, they cannot private money, they cannot have the private money, they cannot have the access to this kind of hospital because of lack of money, and that is counterprogressive. Why is that? Because the poor people have the more burden than rich people. So even though the government have to protect the citizen, they cannot do that. And that is why we think unjust. So why the raising tax is just? Because as I mentioned before, in raising tax, this is going to take the proportionally on the rich people. So rich people have more burden on paying the tax, and less people, poor people are less burden for raising tax. And what will happen is that, of course, poor people have to pay tax, but the amount of money, so the social welfare system, or social security system, which is necessary for the citizens, especially for the poor people, still remain. So that the amount of money they receive from this kind of social welfare system is still larger than they're paying for paying as a tax, and that is why they can still continue their lives. I mean, if they get disease, they can access to the hospital. If they get something like in public welfare, they can access to that, and that is why we think that the raising tax is over the reduction. Thank you.
Thank you, leader of the opposition for the speech. Now we'd like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister to extend the government president to the session.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So today, government side and opposition side share the same goal. It is correct money to deal with the fiscal crisis. So we believe to achieve that goal, reduction in government spending is much more important and should be prioritized over raising tax. So that's the reason we propose this motion. So I have two arguments. First, how the raising tax is bad, and second, reaction in government spending is necessary. So I have some refutation, but all the refutation is integrated with my arguments. So I explain one by one. So as my first speaker already told you that raising tax is very good, is do much harm for the poor people. So this the learning tax just create a new victim. So opposition side said they impose more tax on rich people and less tax on poor people. But no matter how much money they are imposed, they should have to own or have to own a burden, and the tax can be a burden for all the citizens. So even if their tax is very small, but for the people it's very a big burden, and they must be suffering. And so if we impose tax, so they will lose a lot of incentive to buy or purchase products in economics. So this is just increase our depression in the country, and this is just accelerate the fiscal crisis in our country. So for those reasons, so raising tax itself is a very irrational and not good way for the people, and just to create a new victims in our nations. And second is about reduction in government spending. So opposition side said reduction. So this motion just reduce the government spending. We are not cut the government spending. So as opposition side said, the poor people will get harm from the lack of social welfare, but we just reduce our government spending. So it doesn't mean they want to lose the access to our social welfare system. So we just in our paradigm we will provide enough subsidy or welfare system, something like that, for the people who is really necessary. There are such poor people like hospital or pension system, something like that. So what we are talking about is to reduce unnecessary and waste of money. Like first speaker already told you that the cost of infrastructure or aid for developing country, or the reception money, or so when another example that when a politician or high rank public officer go somewhere, they will take very expensive tickets or something like that. But can be, and there is enough room to cut the money under status quo. So we should just prioritize this and the reduction of in government break. So that's the reason reduction is much more important on our side. So then I read in comparison. So this theme of this motion is which is more, we should be prioritizing raising tax or reduction in government spending. So it doesn't mean we can take only one choice, but we also admit that we were raising a tax as a final step, but what we should do in first place is to reduction in government spending. Why? That's because, as I said before, raising tax is just create a new victim, which is poor people. So it doesn't matter the amount of tax. So, but however, under state school, as I already told you, there's enough room or enough chances to reduce our government spending. So, so when we compare the harm of both these two, the reduction of our government spending less harmful for the less harmful than the rising tax. So we believe that reduction in government spending should be prioritized much over than raising tax. So even if it is not enough for dealing with the fiscal crisis, we also take ways to we maybe take ways to raising tax as a final step, but what we should do at first is the reduction in government spending. So that is the reason this motion, we propose this motion for this reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for his speech. Now we'd like to invite the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to extend the opposition case to the ceremony speaker.
What the opening comment misunderstand in this debate is they believe that they share the goal with us. We don't think that we are sharing the goal of this kind of this policy, because we are supporting, we think even if slightly that escape from the fiscal crisis is slower in our side of the house, still we think the moral ground should be prioritized over the practical ground in the first places, because we think this is fundamentally unjustifiable to sacrifice the poor people rather than the burdening on the rich people. That's why we think that even if we consider practical ground, still we should support the moral ground of our side of the house. That's why we are very proud to oppose. But we're going to talk about three things in my speech. Firstly, the clarification of the both policy, and thirdly, that even if in the context of practical ground, that there is not so much difference in the first places, and thirdly, the most important argumentation or the principle or the moral ground of justice of the government spending and government taxation. So firstly, in terms of clarification of the both policy, we think firstly the opening government have strategically failed because they try to take the soft stance and they escape from the hard stance because in the context of BP debating, the hard stance should be taken, and this is more likely to strategically good option for the opening government, but they fail scale. But what we need to understand in this debate is that in order to assume the same amount of money the government wants to gather, in this kind of situation, the hard stance should be the necessary option for the opening government. That's why we think that our claim about this, our requirement of supporting these kind of the reduction of the welfare, reduction of livelihood protection is necessary. But even if the amount of money is still limited in their side of the house, still this kind of situation of reduction of social welfare is fundamentally burdening, huge burdening on this kind of the poor people and most vulnerable people on the society. Because firstly, if there's such kind of let's take the example of the hospital fee, even if they do not cut the all hospital fee, still increasing the burden on this kind of poor people. When they access to the hospital, there is huge hesitation to go to the hospital because we think their money is fundamentally important thing for them in the context of fiscal crisis. That's why we see this kind of hesitation to go to the hospital. Serious serious improvement of diseases. We think this situation is fundamentally harmful. Or in the context of like for example, decreasing the border or set the high bar in terms of accessing the livelihood protection. Also, the damaging in terms of the border level people, border level poor people. Even though in our paradigm they can access to the livelihood protection, in their paradigm, the lots of people who are existing in the border or changing the border, we think these kind of people are sacrificed and they cannot access and they cannot enjoy the quality of, they cannot enjoy the minimal level of quality of life. We think this is massively significant situation. Or even in the context of cutting the number of public officers, still these kind of people who are actually dealing with the social welfare is also also damaging, because we think that in order to deal with the lots of people, poor people who want to evaluate whether or not they can get the social welfare or not, they have to wait longer because the number of public officers is decreasing. That's why everything, even if this is right, even if this is as they claim, this is not large amount of burden, we think still this is lots of the burden actually practically exists in the first places. We think this situation is fundamentally unjustifiable. So secondly, in terms of practical ground, firstly, their only logic coming from the opening government side is because the motivation of the people, motivation of the rich people or rich corporation, they try to escape. The first response from the opening opposition is this is not mutually exclusive, because in the context of high fiscal crisis, because actually the lots of economic situation is significant and significantly damaging, and company already recognize that this is even if they take the business on this kind of country, they are not so profitable. That's why anyway these corporations or anyway these rich people are escaping in both sides of the house. That's why this is fundamentally not mutually exclusive. But we say in the context of still this is some people remain in that because of language problem, because they do not want they love this kind of corporation country. This even if in our paradigm that even if slightly even if the increasing taxation happening, still they live in some people still remain. That's why as long as they fail to show that to what extent increasing tax escape exclusively that make the rich people escape, we think that this kind of quantity of this kind of money they get is particularly unevaluatable. We think this is significantly damaging to their cases. That's why I think that even in practical ground, this is not so much different between our side of the house and their side of the house. That's why we should prioritize in the principle ground. So let's talk about principle argumentation from our side of the house. What we need to understand is this principle argumentation is independent from the practical argumentation of their side of the house. That's why even if they or closing governments successfully show that slightly that they can escape from the economic crisis rapidly, why this kind of rapid escape is more important than our morality. Because we think we already showed you that lots of reasons why this is principally unjustifiable to impose burden on the poor. Because first reason we already mentioned that is this is principally that this kind of in general cases that the tax or the burden should be the progressive. We think that these kind of born in the rich or whether or not they are rich or poor is fundamentally decided by the arbitral ground. Like for example, if you are born, fortunately you are born in the talented family, or you have inherently have the talent, or you have the good educational environment, in these cases you are more likely to be rich. But if you are not, you are more likely to be poor. We think this kind of birth lottery is always exists. That's why in order to minimize this kind of inherent unfairness between between rich and poor, we think this kind of burden should be progressive. That's why rich people should take the more burden over the poor people. We think this is general principle of taxation of the government. And secondly, we say in the specific context of fiscal crisis, we already mentioned that this is responsible for the rich people, because rich people are more likely to lobby this kind of corporation, this kind of government, and they try to, for example, they try to do the bad thing for the government, and as a result, the fiscal crisis is happening. That's why I said they have the more responsibility over the poor people. That's why for those two reasons, we think in the Prince program, we think these kind of rich people have the more responsibility over the poor people. That's why even if this is slightly damaging to the rich people's motivation, or even if slightly damaging to the monetary autonomy of the rich people, still we should prioritize these kind of poor people's social welfare. That's why we are very proud to oppose.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, for your speech. Now we'd like to invite a member of the government to show your extension from the closing government. It's in 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I have two things to talk about. First, I will explain. I will add something to the opening government about the status quo, and secondly, I will add to the something to the opening government about the paradigm after taking this plan. But before that, I have refutation to the opening opposition. He says that they say that because a rich person are much more responsible for the for the fiscal crisis, so that's why because the rich person gives money to the party, so the party or politician tend to make the politics which is benefit for the company. So that's why company's policy, government policy fail. So that's why rich person have responsible for the physical crisis. I think it's not true because the party and the politician have to make the policies for the majorities. So if the rich person is only few percentage of the population, so that's why what he said. So politician or party always makes the policy for the majority. So that's why what they said is not true. Their side always says that because we don't have a hard stance. So that's why we have to take the hard stance. But I think it's not true. In our paradigm, also we can reduce the hospital fee or something like that for only rich person, right? Like for example, population in the income, we can give the ticket, and if they show the ticket, they can. If they are poor, they can. They don't have to much more money than the rich person like this. So also in the first stance, it's not the soft stance. So what he said is not true. So let me move on my argument. First, I will explain another status quo. The opening government always explain why the tax disincentivize to buy something product but they didn't explain why the not buying product leads to the buying product leads to the solving fiscal crisis. So I will explain now. If the people buy if people buy many things, of course the company which sells the product can collect the money, and of course, and so that's why, because the company can have much money, so the company can distribute this money to the workers. So that's why workers' salary will increase, and because workers' salary will increase, workers' salary will increase. Workers have much more incentive to buy the product from the company, and people buy the product, and company have much more money. So like this, the company and the worker have much money. So that's why through the tax, because they can give the money to the government, it leads to solving the problem of fiscal crisis. Secondly, after taking this plan, I will explain why imposing tax. The opening government explains why imposing tax disincentivize something product, but they didn't explain what it leads to the not solving the problem of fiscal crisis. So I will explain, because if the people don't buy the product from the company because the company cannot have the money, so of course company cannot distribute the money to the workers. So that's why worker don't have enough money. So that's why worker will try to save the money. So that's why they cannot buy the product from the company. So it's a bad cycle like this. So that's why, of course, their income and company's money will decrease. They cannot give the money to the government. So fiscal problem don't solving. More under the status quo. Under the status quo, because many people buy the product and the economics go good. Of course, poor people also can have money. So that's why, even if the hospital fee or something like the necessity care fee increase, of course, because the poor people also have money, they can use the money for the something like that. So that's why no problem. So I totally propose this motion.
Thank you, member of the government, for this speech. Now we'd like to invite the member of the opposition to show your extension from the closing opposition with a 7-minute taken.
プリント様何の価値もないだから結局デフレ対策として雑増するのって結構ありがちで分かんないけど、普通にお金が回らんねんから、どこへお金のきっかけが上がればそのデフレスパイラルがこう消えるわけです。そんな
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From now, I talk about two things. First is a refutation to the previous speaker, and second is extension reputation of the opening opposition's argument. So let me start. Let me explain one by one. First is reputation. First, they say the system of the responsibility of rich person isn't true because politicians make policy for majority, but they fail to care one of the portions of election. Politician needs a lot of money to have the election lobbying. So they need money. So what opening opposition says isn't a mistake. Government politicians need a lot of money when they do election. When they hold election is true. So that's why the logic politicians make policy for election. Policy for a rich person is still existing. So the logic politicians make a policy for rich person is exists. That's why the responsibility of rich people is always keep existing. So second, they say imposing tax is unjustified. Sorry, and they said about reducing social welfare isn't reducing social welfare isn't bad for poor people because they can, for example, giving a ticket or something that helps poor person. But first of all, they said about the fiscal crisis situation, the miserableness that is even for cuts the money for example the degree of reducing the hospital or something important thing. In such a situation, their system the system they say is unrealistic because in such a situation government don't have room for enough care for them. So that's way as opening opposition said we have to take some motion to repair this crisis situation. So they are so the previous speaker's plan isn't unrealistic, and they say imposing tax is. So they keep saying impose tax is a bad way for poor, and they said we can't, and that is unrealistic. But first of all, okay, I took it the second argument. So let me move on second argument. Second, as closing, opening opposition justified. The room raising tax is good. Raising tax is good because as they said that system gets more money, get money or rich person who have more responsibility for their work, for their responsibility to society, and that is good for better than reducing money, reducing cutting welfare, and doing this first among doing opening debate, government side said government side admit the raising taxes benefit because they said it will also take it rust away. So they said they admit the effectiveness of that plan, and also as we said and they couldn't explain why prioritize reduction is connected to the solving the financial system, and they also said if that isn't become effective, they take a plan that is raising a tax. So that means they admit that their plan isn't work. So in terms of this, our plan is good. So that's why we oppose.
Thank you, member of the opposition, for this speech. Now we'd like to invite the government whip to summarize this debate with the citizen speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I want to talk about two things. First one is summarize this debate, and second is highlight our arguments. But before my speech, the opposition side points that our side don't explain the connection between reduction, prioritize reduction and solving problem. But I will explain this in my argument. So let me move my speech. First, our side says that in the status quo, government is wasting money. For example, aid for developed country or space research, and government have to distribute money for each bank and each individuals. And our side said, in the status quo, citizens don't likely to spend money because in physical crisis, citizens don't have enough money for buying goods or something. But in physical crisis, government should incentivize citizens to work hard, but citizens have not enough money to buy something, so citizens have not incentive to work. So citizens don't likely to spend money. And also this intensifies rich people because they are also lose incentive to use money and rather they save money. And our side said even if tax is small, this is big damage for poor and create new victims. And opposition side said rich people have a higher responsibility than poor, and because the cause of bad economics is rich people, because sometimes they do lobbying and they talk with politicians and they ask to pass the suitable policy for rich people. So rich people have a responsibility, higher responsibility than poor people. And as my partner told you, our side explains the process of how economics is go good. And in the status quo, people buy many products and company have much money. So company give a higher salary for worker, and worker have an incentive to buy products. And this leads to solving fiscal crisis, and because money circulates effectively in society. And after plan, as my partner told you, while imposing tax, this intensifies people, because after the plan, there are tax and they are imposing tax, so people don't buy products and company don't have money, so company cannot give to the government government and money don't circulate effectively, so economics is bad after plan.
Okay, even if the circulation of money is successful, please explain the comparison why this is justified to burdening the poor.
Okay. If imposing tax is successfully, as government, we give a solution for poor by using money and for example aid for poor and something like that. So it is also better for poor. So that's why we oppose this motion. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, government, for the speech. Now we'd like to invite our opposition to finalize debate with the development schedule.
Government's role is defend country or make country better. So we think we take better way. Position side says which person have big responsibility. So impose rich more tax and tax is correct. Because of impose more tax rich government defend poor for raising tax. Fiscal crisis. Use now for now is better for impact.
for long term. Long term and economy become worse because one person say good or deal with fiscal crisis. Become worse because government don't help poor. Sorry, finish my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, opposition very for the stage. Now we'll speak to the overall presentation.
そうです。
あまり言うんだったら、なんかさっきちょっと聞いたやつ、その多少リッチに優遇してでもそっちの方が最終的に実力ねみたいな話するっていうあれなんですけど、プロセスでなんか全然リッチが楽なら、リッチがその国にいて残って会社のリッチとなって会社の重役だったりすることが多いから、工場の新しい設備投資とか普通になんかコンシューミング商品をコンスームしたりして、コンシュームとかも結構リッチの方が多く消費したりするから、ヘジテーション少ない分、結局なんかそれで。
なんか個人がいる話よりも、周りの話がいけないんじゃないか。金の周りが良くなくなるっていう話が。
側でですか？そのレイジングタックスすると、
もともとも減るし、例えば消費税とかやったら、なんかツイッターで読んでんけど、別のツイッターで読んでんけど、お金がさ、会社がいっぱいあったとして、今週もあったとして、これ丸が会社な、こう材料をこうしてみたいな、こういう流れで来るやん。材料がこうあって、このために額面が減っていくわけやん。売り上げとかに対して減るから。で、それがさらにあれで、やばくない？お金がその政府に吸い込まれて、これが、間の中抜きがこう入っていって、その回すどころじゃなくなるやん。トータルのお金の量がこう入ってるから。やべ
でもなんかそのガバ的にリダクションのオーバーレイジングタックスだから、なんか結局そのスタンスとして帰結が良ければいいよっていう話するためには、レイジングタックスじゃなくてリダクションである程度成功する話みたいなので。
リダクションである程度成功する話は、何だっけ。無駄が多いって話、無駄が多いって話。
無駄が多いってどういうことですか？
あれ壊れてるってとこ。合ってる。そうです、そうして。これすごくないこれ。割れる。さすが。天才だ。DL を話を広げるべきだったけど、思いますにプレイはしなかった。広げられなかった。
本当にプラクティカルな帰結に触れなくてよかった。聞かれたら触れるべきだった。
触れた方がいいよ。触れた方がいいよ。
ベースを使って1個だけ下してた OG と、そのベースを使った上で1個だけ下した CG って感じで、そのロジックの人に触らなかったから、普通に OG かなと思ってる。
そうちょっと思った。CG かなと思った。CG かな。割れるけど俺は CG かなと思った。
しようとしてたのは個人部が
それもある。
刺さってないけど。
民主主義や。
刺さってないけど、そのプラクティカルのメカニズムがなんかそんな変わんないんだとしたら、EPM はまだリフュートできたけど、結構ガン無視してそのプリンシプルの話とか、そのモデルに対するリフュートとかも結構無視してたけど、クロージングはあれだわ、そのなんかロビングしないみたいな、そこら辺からは一応切ろうとしてたのかな。だから結局何なのか分かんなかったけど、まだリフュートしてた。
あれは普通に考えた。民主のために見てるから。なんというと、もともとある程度ウェルフェアが話題になってるってことは、むしろその定職と特殊総側をケアした結果としてのなんかあれになってる可能性も結構高い。実はこういう
もともとのクライシスが
クライシス自体が
なんかリーマンショック的なこう貧しい人も家を持てるようにタクステイルゼンプションみたいにめっちゃつけたらあれなくなっちゃいましたみたいなロジックああ確かに
佐藤荘のところからも普通に出てたでしょ、そのロビングの話。 姿勢。
YouTube 姿勢だけで変わるのかな。
正しいことであるけど。
研究所は後ろなんで、そのベースのところで、まあそうだね。なんかリップでちょろっとだけど、一応、そのなんでエコノミック、ゴーベターか、こっちでちゃんと話してたっていうあれもしてる。
前の方が、そのロジックのところにおいても、なんかエコノミッククライシスの状況だからこそっていうところにつなげていった気がするから、エコノミックっていうか、フィナンシャルクライシスの状況。フィナンシャルクライシスだからこそ、なんか人々っていうのは自分のプロパティがどう変化するかっていうのにケアするよね、ナチュラリーケアするよねみたいな。
ケアした結果どういう話が起こるのかを説明したの
なん
は
かタックスが上がることによって、なんかそのちょっと上がったぜみたいな、買わなくなるっていうロジックとか、そういうフィナンシャルクライシスにちゃんとつなげた上で、なんか変化することが示せたのかなっていうふうに思ったけど。
ケアするまでは言ってた気がするけど、ケアしてからの。ケアしてからのメカニズムは。
だから買わなくなってバットサイクルっていうのはどういう話でしょう。メカニズム増えてなくなるあまり。
いやいや。
いやいや。
だからそのサブカルがそんなに派手になったら一緒なんだよね。まだ演技してる。まだ
写真にいいねついてるよ。
ディベートを作った法人の方に気がするけど。
向けられてる。ボートやろ。ボートやろ。チェア2票やろ。ボートやろ。まあ、実際水平線と乗ったときは、まあ、その形式上のボートにするっていうのは、パネル的には自己防衛になるから、まあ、ボートにしたんでって。本セっていうのとボートっていうのって、その2人でやってる時でも、実は結構あれ、精神的じゃないけど、そのジャッジとしての責任的には違うから、一応ボートっていう体でみたいな感じに、水平線やし回するみたいな感じは結構戦略としては取りやすい。実は。ジャッジディベーターに言われると、いやまあボートしたからって。どうしても。まあ、ジャッジ間評価は、結局まあ水平線をまあ、たどって、どうしようもないときになんか変に折れたよりもまあ、時間ないですし、まあ、冒頭っていう定義にしましょうっていうのは、まあ、そっちの方が真摯な態度かなと思う。
私の23の評価はそんな感じです。じゃあ、あと1、2と3、4の差はてっぺが説明してくれます。
23の評価はそんな感じで、今回普通にオープニングディベートになったのを判断した上でオープニングを比べてみました。3、4は後で話します。オープニングディベートの時に何を見たかっていうと、1つ目にコンテクスト、どんくらいどこからリダクションが起こるのかみたいな、そんな感じのところを考えて書いてました。なんでかって言ったら、OG の方が不必要なところ、例えばスペースリサーチとか、そういうエイドとか、そういうところから切っていくよみたいな話をしたんで、それに対して多めにエンゲージするんで、まずどの程度ライブリフとかプロテクションとかウェルフェアとかが減るのかなっていうふうなものをクラリファイしました。で、2つ目に、OG がメインで出してたプラクティカリーにハームがあるのか、なんか、プアが苦しむっていうのと、なんかディスインセンティバイズとユースマニーみたいな、それがあるのかっていうのと、メリットがあるのかっていうので見ました。この点においては結局、なんか、まあ、ハームっていうのはそんなにないなっていうふうに判断します。タックスをかけたとしても、そんなにハームというプアっていうか、ディスインセンティバイズがユニークに起こるのかっていうのを見 やらなかった。まあでも、リダクションの方においては、まあ、ある程度インセンティバイズが起こって、まあ、回るっていう話は取れました。だけども、最後に3つ目に、モラル的に、その応のスタンスっていうのが、ラピッドソリューションよりもモラルっていうのが大事っていうので、プリンシプルの話をしていた。その点においてのリピートっていうのが一貫性にならなくて、このアーギュメントっていうのがちゃんと OG が出したメリット、OG が出したリダクションのインセンティバイズするっていうふうなところよりも、はるかに上回っていたので、ここで差をつけてボートしました。これを見ていくと、コンテキスト、OG が出していたのは、コンテキストで不必要な、例えばインフラとか、エイドとかスペースとか切っていって、だから、ライブリフットとか、そういうのはあんま削れないよねっていう話。まあ、OO からすれば、なんか、現状でもなんかグラデュアリーにそういうカットが、グラデュアリーにクライシスが起こるから、なんか不必要なところはだんだんカットされていって、結果としてちゃんとライブリフットプロテクションとか、そういう大事なところのコアのところもカットすべき、それがスタンスなんじゃないかっていうふうなクレームがされていた。で、まあ、この点において、どのくらい、まあ、ライブリフットプロテクションっていうのがウェルフェアとか出るのかは分からなくて、そこでは差をつけることができなかったんですけども、DLO のところから、anyway、だからどんなカットだったとしても、バーデンフォープアっていうのは起こるなっていうふうに取れました。なんでかって、その説明量として、例えばなんかパブリックオフィサーがいなくなったら、なんかそれによりアクセスするプアな人々が、なんか待ち時間とか、そういうもので、なんかちゃんとスムーズに審査受けられなくなったりするかもしれないし、みたいな。なんかハイバーをセットしたら、そのボーダーのところにいる人っていうのはなんかサファーするねみたいな、そういうイラストを含めたその話がされていたので、完全にそのおじぎの話をベストケースを取ったとしても、なんかそういうなんかプアとか、そういうよりアクセスする人が苦しむ状況っていうのは、アシュームできました。その点において、2つ目にプラクティカリーに OG が出したハームとベネフィットっていうのがあるかどうか。でハームっていうのは2個出していて、ディステインセンティバイスとユースっていうのと、ハームトゥープアっていうので、まずハームトゥープアっていうところなんですけども、これっていうのは、O の方からフリップされていて、プロポーショネートにタックスをつけることによって、リッチからたくさん取って、プアから少し取ることによって、なんか、結果としてウェルフェアサービスとかが充実するから、そのプアがされた分、ちゃんとウェルフェアが充実して、助けられるよねっていうフリップをされていた。この点においてリフレクトがなかったので、なんかプアっていうのも O の方で普通に直れるんじゃないかっていうふうに判断しました。もう一個、ディスインセンティバイスユースっていうところなんですけども、これも O の、特に DLO の方から、そもそもモチベーションっていうのはもっとミューチュアルエクスクルーシブだって話で、クライシスっていうのが起こってる以上は、カンパニーはなんかエスケープするしみたいな、そんな感じの話で、どれくらいディスインセンティバイズっていうのが起こるのかっていう話ところっていうのが若干見えにくくなっていた。で、このハームっていうところにおいては、なんか起こるのか起こらないのか、どれくらいハームなのか、どれくらいインパクトがあるのかっていうところっていうのは判断ができませんでした。これで2個目に、OG が出していたプラクティカルなベネフィットとして、これっていうのはなんかそんなにリフューズされていなくて、なんか普通にそのリダクションによって、なんか何かしらうまくいく世界っていうのは、OG っていう段階でちょっと示していた。だけれども、3つ目のモラル的にっていうところで判断しました。このモラル的にっていうところは応用がそれで2群出していて、まず1つ目にタックス。なんかそもそもなんかそういうバーデンっていうのはプロポーショネートにあるべきみたいな話。なんでかって言ったら、そもそもこのクライシスを作っている存在自体が、なんか、リッチの方が加担しているね。例えばなんか、ロビーイングとかによって影響力、経団連とか医師会とかのロビーイングとかによって、なんかポリシーフェイルして、それによってクライシスが起こったみたいな、そんな感じで、よりそういうのに関連しているものがリッチだよねっていう、そのロジックがしっかり詰められていた。それにおいて、だからこそ、なんかプアじゃなくてリッチの方にバーデンが押されるべきだっていう、まずプリンシプルを出した上で、そのプリンシプルにのっとって、そのタックスっていうのは、なんか、違うな。リダクションっていうのは、なんかプアにバーデンが行くような制度であるっていう話っていうのをちゃんと話していた。例えば、話していた。それに比べて、それだからこそアンジャストだっていうところのモラル的な話っていうのをしっかり詰め切れていた。でタックスにおいてもプロポーショネートすることによって、なんかリッチによりちゃんとかかって、プアに少なく。これがそのバーデンのあるべき姿みたいな、そういうプリンシプルの話っていうのをしっかり詰め切っていた。上に、スタンスとして、なんかラピッドよりも、ちゃんとモラルを見るべきだっていう話っていうので、なんかその 2個っていうのがリーズっていうのが2個ぐらいあって、なんかそもそもオービトラリーにそのエコノミックシチュエーションが決められている以上、インフェレントギャップっていうのをそのちゃんと消すべきだっていう話と、なんかそもそもレスポンシビリティフォーリッチだよね、このクライシス自体がレスポンシビリティフォーリッチだよねっていうところのリーズンっていうのをしっかり詰めていた。か から仮に OG のメリットっていうのが多少あったとしても、今回はそのプリンシプル的にちゃんと相手を上回る分だけの理由を述べた OO の方が上に行くのかと思って、OO を OG という順番になりました。で、OG、CG をさっき話した通りで、僕が判断したのは、CG から取れたユニークなエクステンションとして取れたのは、買うことによって相互するよねっていうところのロジックを出した。っていうのは、買うことによってカンパニーのプロフィットが上がって、プロフィットが上がることによってサラリーが上がって、サラリーが上がることによって人々の購買意識が上がって、なんか良くなるよねみたいな話がされていたんですけども、そもそもその OG としてそもそもこれになんかここにおいてロジックを足しただけだなっていうふうに思って、なんでかっていうと、OG の方がその買うまでのベースとなるアーギュメント、ベースとなる流れっていうのを作った上で、その OG 自身もロジックフリップ出している。例えばなんか、インセンティバイズがあるからこそ、なんかその、クリエイトカンパニーみたいなことを作るのか分かんなかったけど、クリエイトカンパニーみたいなことをして、なんか金が回る状況っていうのをちゃんと描いていた。ここにおいて、このロジック自体に、ロジック自体になんかディファレンシエイトができなかったけども、そのベースとなるアサーション、ベースとなる流れっていうのを作った OG の方が、このディベートにコントリビュートしているのかなっていうふうに判断して、そこで差をつけて OG を前にしました。で、CG と CEO の差なんですけども、男性 CEO のところからユニークなエクステンションっていうのが見られなくて、ですね、なんかあった。CEO のエクステンション。なんか、まず、エクステンション、そのユニークなエクステンション、OO とディファレンシエイトされているようなエクステンションっていうのが見られなかった点っていうのと、その CG に対してのリピートっていうのはちゃんとしようとしてたっていうスタンスは見られたんだけども、例えばなんか、エレクション派にいるから、相手が言っていたポリティシャンケアマジョリティっていうのはうつやみたいな話と、なんか、アンディアリスティック、クライシス、そのプロポーショネートでリダクションするチケット配れみたいな話っていうのはアンディアリスティックだよねみたいな話がされていたんだけども、まず、なんでこれを評価できなかったかというと、そもそも NG、その CG の方のリフュートっていうのがあまりなんか有効なものではなかった。有効なものではないところのリフュートにリフュートをしていた感じがして、そんなにこのディベートにおいて重要なリフュートというふうには判断できなかったし、一番差をつけたのは CG の方がロジック1個で割ったものもユニークになんとそのモーションを肯定するような流れ、モーションを肯定するようなロジック、アーギュメントとなっていたのに対して CEO の方はそのリフュートはいくらかあったけども、いけてないリフュートが何かあったぐらいにしか見えなくて、今回はそこで差をつけて CG の方にしました。はい、以上がレフリーです。